Hey guys, how is everyone doing today? It's Marty, and I just wanted to ask everyone a question. Do you ever have those days where you just wake up and nothing necessarily happened? Nothing went wrong, nothing went super right, nothing maybe led you to feel this way, but you are in your feelings. And your feelings, and just kind of nothing's gonna bring you out of it. I know I've had those days. I feel like it's part of the human existence, right? But something that I find, though I don't know if it's super healthy, is sometimes when I feel that way, instead of being like, well, no, I'm just not gonna feel that way, I need to shut it off, shut it out. Sometimes I dive deeper into my feelings and want to watch a show, read a book, or play a game that gets me in my feelings, which kind of had me thinking about games that I've played in the past or recently even that have really gotten me in my feelings, either right when I'm playing them, like I am immediately overcome, or after I've finished them, I can't stop thinking about them, right? Like something about it stays with me. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about with you guys today, is 5 games, or at least 5, that I can think of right off the top of my head, and there are many more, I'm sure. We could do a part 2 maybe, let me know if you would like me to down below. But 5 games that really stand out that have had me in my feelings big time. The first one that I want to talk about today is Final Fantasy VII. Now, I'm more so talking about the original, so 1997, I want to say it came out around then. Very young, the first time we ever played that. And then obviously the remake and now Rebirth has come out, and revisiting those series has been epic, or that series, that game. But I remember playing that on the PlayStation, little QB version, and it was still such an emotional roller coaster. I think that was, first of all, I'm not great at turn-based games, so I do kind of like that about the remake, that it's not necessarily following that same formula. However, it's still, the original had this sense of really building your party. So you really got to know these characters that are in your party. Obviously, main character is Cloud. Spoiler alert a little bit. I won't try to give too much away, but there is definitely loss in this game, right? You build up this wonderful party of crazy characters with different personality traits, different skills, and develop deeper relationships with some than others, and there is loss. Loss at the core of the story, and it is a driving force in the story. And I remember even when I was young and seeing that loss, I was just gutted. And now thinking about it again as an adult and really approaching the remake, Rebirth, it's hitting even harder and even deeper. The big thing is each of these characters is really searching for their truth, and finding peace and finding their own peace in the world, and with that comes some serious sacrifice. So that's definitely one that had me back when I was younger, and now I've been roped kind of back into with the remake. The second one on the list today is actually Telltale's The Walking Dead. I don't know if a lot of you guys played that one or not, but I believe that came out initially in 2012, around there, and that first chapter, volume, whatever you want to call it, for Telltale's The Walking Dead, followed Lee. So he was the main character that you played as, and again, you kind of develop this group of people, not necessarily your party, but a group of friends and foes, and it's decision based, right? So the decisions that you make are going to impact the rest of your journey, the rest of your story, and then further on, into the next games that followed from Telltale's The Walking Dead. You continue, and the story continues over from that first game. But the one that I'm talking about specifically today is that first one with Lee. If you know, you know. I was wrecked. I was wrecked with some of the decisions, especially one of the last I'm sorry. My emotions got me right now. One of the last decisions you make in that game, you start as Lee and you build a really important relationship with a child. Her name is Clementine, and you're kind of step into the surrogate father figure, and you're really guiding her through this apocalyptic world, right? If anyone's familiar with The Walking Dead, whether that be comic books, TV show, games, it's not starting off in a good space. Obviously, there are infected. It's zombie. And then with that comes tension of people who are living and fighting with each other to survive. And so you're Lee, you're taking care of Clementine, baby Clem. And you really get attached to these characters, and there's so much stress on it because it's decision based. So you're like, oh, should I have done that? I don't know. Was that the best decision? Did I just impact that? And they're so good about being like, so and so will remember that you did that. But the biggest thing that stuck with me was the ending of this one. It was so emotional. I remember bawling. No shame. It's okay to cry. Tears do not define your strength. I was broken. This one had me. I'd still replay it though. I don't know. And that's the other thing about decision-based games is I feel like there's a lot of replay value to kind of see what different paths you can take. But that's just a big one that in that moment I was just like, no, how could this happen? Even though you always knew it was a possibility there, right? But then when it happens, you're just, gravity takes you. The next one I want to talk about is Little Nightmares 1 and 2. But the first one, I think, came out about 2017. And you're following a character named Six, a little girl who is walking around this really horrific world. If you've played the games, then you know it is so cool. But the horror aspect is definitely creepy, but in some ways it's also very, I don't want to say aesthetically pleasing, but it is a beautiful, scary landscape and really intricately made scary monster creature. Again, I don't want to give too much away, but you're following Six. You're playing as Six, and she's trying to survive this world and get from A to B and, figure out a way to not get got. And then as time goes on, you kind of see Six as this vulnerable character, and, as you're playing as her, you gain this trust for her, and you are like, well, she needs to do what she needs to do. But there is one decision, Gnome, that I'm thinking of in particular in the first game where I was like I felt a disconnect with the character. Even though we are Six, I just felt like, whoa, was it justified? And sometimes you know, sometimes you don't, sometimes you're not sure. And that's one that really had me thinking, and then I felt like, ooh, where do I stand, right? So then the second Little Nightmares came along, I think about 2021, and you're playing as Mono. And I actually didn't realize when I first started this one how heavily it ends up tying into the first one. So spoilers, no spoilers, are definitely related and in a way that I hadn't initially expected. And again, this one, I really felt for the characters and understood their motives, even when something drastic happened where I was like, oh, no, why did you do that? No! And I think that's what really had me in the feelings, is almost not wanting it to have happened, but kind of seeing both sides of what ends up happening in this game. And that's a really weird headspace to be in, right? I don't want to say there's necessarily a straight villain, straight hero. It's kind of like everyone's trying to do what they need to do to survive. And again, at the end of the day, are there good guys and bad guys? I don't know. You'll have to play for yourself. Let me know what you think. If you've played both of them, how you feel, and if you're super excited for the third one to come out like I am. I cannot wait. Again, I feel like this is one of those horror games that almost plays into the cozy game genre. Like, it is very horrific, don't get me wrong, but something about it is also just so delightful. The world is so rich. The next one I really want to talk about is God of War and God of War Ragnarok. So I'm talking God of War like 2018 and then Ragnarok 2022. Not necessarily the original God of Wars, but these newer ones where you are playing as Kratos and Atreus primarily. And the first one especially, you really just get introduced to them, and obviously they're the father and son in the story, and they have suffered loss. You know, it's a hero's journey in some ways, but they are really dealing with grief, or more so they are not dealing with grief, right? Kratos and Atreus really have a strained relationship initially, and even though they want to protect each other, their communication is not there, and you can feel that so deeply. So while you're playing it, you're like, come on, just say it, just talk about things. This would all be resolved if we could just talk to each other. But of course, then we wouldn't have a game, right? So they're really dealing with that sense of loss, sense of family, trying to find their sense of self, really outside of each other even, which really kind of goes into Ragnarok, God of War Ragnarok. We're a little bit older, right? I think our relationship has deepened and there is more room for communication. However, in the first one, you kind of develop, again, this crew, this party, this surrogate family, and there's definitely strains in the family now. As our story goes on, there has been conflict, there has been even bigger loss, and going into this game, I was almost prepared to lose somebody very significant. I just had a feeling, and then the loss that we were met with as players was not at all what I was ready for. Again, sorry, I'm smacking my mic. I bawled. I cried. I lost it in that moment. I was blubbery mess. You know, even though you think you know what's about to happen, I just was like, no. I knew it the split second before it happened, and then like, nope, wasn't prepared. Thought I had this, did not have it. Had me feeling some kind of way. That is for sure. The last big one I want to talk about is actually the most recent. I played here on this channel. You'll hear the music in the background. When the Past Was Around. Oh man, that was my first big experience with point and click genre. It is so good, right? You're following Ada, and she is kind of the main protagonist, and you very early on learn that she has lost the love of her life, Owl. She's lost her sense of self. She's lost direction completely. She doesn't understand. She doesn't know what to do. Like, where do you go from there? That ultimate loss, and how do you handle that grief? So right from the get-go, it's a heavy play while still being so beautiful. The artwork, beautiful. The music, impeccable. You will love playing this game. And the puzzles, they have a way of taking like these daily tasks and turning them into puzzles, and then that progresses you through the story. So you're really taking a step back into her memories, and piecing things back together. It's taking that step back so she can take that step forward ultimately, and she really ends up finding herself again, which is so beautiful. And then she can look back on these memories fondly and not necessarily feel the loss as much as she understands what they have done for her, and she can excel in her life, right? Even though she has lost Owl, she will carry him wherever she goes, and she's gonna move forward in this beautiful new direction. And that was one where I didn't cry when I played it, but I remember just being like, whoa. And then just thinking about it and kind of struggling to figure out what I wanted to play next, because I kind of picked it on a whim. I saw it was on a recommended list, and I was like, oh yeah, I've kind of always been interested in a point and click. I was not expecting such a journey. And it's a short game, right? It doesn't take very long to complete, but it will stay with you. It has lasting power, that is for sure, especially if you struggle with some of the puzzles like I do. But they were so much fun, and it was just a really rich story. And even though there's no dialogue, it really speaks to you. It speaks to the heart, speaks to the soul, definitely. Yeah. So, that being said, those were 5 games in my gaming history that I can think of that really stuck with me emotionally, hit me to the core in the moment. I think back on to this day and go, whoa. Like, I can still think about those exact moments when I first played through them. And those are kind of those games where you're like, oh, I would do anything to play those for the first time again, but they're still so good. I would replay them all in a heartbeat, that's for sure. But I would really love to know if there are any games that just move you, you know, whether that emotion be sad, you know, low, or high vibrations, happy, excited. What games really just get you thinking, stick with you profoundly? I just gotta know, all right? Let me know down below. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you so much for sticking around. Have a fantastic day and feel what you need to feel, okay?